Alright guys, this is kind of my crash course on beginner albums for people who want to get into music. This is kind of just a rant video. I mean, obviously the channel's called Blink Rants, but I've kind of have a little bit of a script here and there. We're kind of going to go genre shifting as we go along here, but alright, let's get started. First album we're going to talk about is Madeon's Adventure. This is a very solid pop album, pop EDM. It is a pop EDM dance album. Very banger hits on its song. It's not quite like Daft Punk or Mystery Skulls, if you've heard any of their works. This is kind of a little bit more mellow in places. There's just a bunch of really, really solid tracks on this record. I really like it. If you're into any pop or EDM, I definitely suggest checking the entire album out. It is super good, and I love it. If you kind of want something that's a little bit more banger, though, like I said earlier, there's Mystery Skulls, which I haven't checked out their entire discography, but the first EP they released is very good, and it's a kind of basic a little bit, but it still has some really good hits in it, and I think it's all very solidly good all around. So it's definitely worth your time to check out. Moving on to a bit more of the experimental side, we have Clarence Clarity's album Think Peace, which he actually released late last year. It's a pretty good album. It feels a lot like Mystery Skulls and having those bangers, but there's a lot of more interesting elements intertwined in there, and they make the album just sound a lot different. Like, there's places where you can hear like church bells and the Discord notification sample used. It's a little bit off the wall. Clarity's work is always a little bit off the wall, but the hooks and the beats and stuff are very simple, very easy to catch on to, and very easy to play back and get really hooked on in the entire album. I think the B-side lacks a little bit compared to the A-side, but it's still a very, very good record I recommend you check out. What else did we have on my list? Oh yeah, moving on to some Synthwave, we have Meteor's Parallel Lives, which I think is one of the best Synthwave albums ever constructed. If you're not familiar with what Synthwave is, and you've played Hotline Miami, then that's what Synthwave is. So Synthwave is just kind of where they took 80s synthesizers and have kind of repurposed them into making like modern music. It's a little bit like electro swing, but instead of doing it with big bands, we're doing it with synthesizers instead, if that makes any sense. Kind of. Not really, though. But Parallel Lives is a very good Synthwave album. It doesn't have any lyrics in it whatsoever, but it holds up incredibly well with its melody and progression, how it goes through all the songs in the album. So that's definitely another album I can recommend. But if you also like Meteor, there is Gunship's Dark All Day, and what is that other Synthwave album I love? My brain just has completely stopped working. It'll come back to me in a second. Endless Summer by The Midnight, which has some lyrics on it. It's very good. And FM84's Atlas, which also kind of falls into the same area. FM84's Atlas being a bit more dancey and EDM based than The Midnight's Endless Summer album. Both are very good, though, if you're into Synthwave. All four albums I obviously recommend you check out. Moving on from Synthwave, we have, moving really far out of that territory, we're going to talk about Arcade Fire's The Suburbs. It's kind of a really relaxing album to listen to. It's kind of very mainstream, I would say, alternative. It kind of fits right down the middle of the road. Is alternative being like a super wide genre. Arcade Fire's Suburbs is like smack straight down the middle. It's not at all hard to understand in any manner. It's not super straightforward. It's just got very nice flow, very nice feeling to the album. It's basically the medium that, in my opinion, defines what alternate really is. And every track on the album, super good, super clean, super well made. Some people think that the album isn't as good as some of Arcade Fire's other works like Funeral and Neon Bible, but I honestly think it is the best Arcade Fire album, and so that's that. Also, no, of course, not dissing on Arcade Fire's later works either. I think they are equally as good. I just think that Suburbs is the most easily approachable for people not super familiar with music, who want to get into other genres of music, who haven't branched into alternative before anyways. But yes, Suburbs is a good album. If you like it, check out Arcade Fire's entire discography, as it is full of really good stuff, and I just find their discography to be incredibly consistent and worth checking out. After that, we've got, if you want some more alternative style sounds, check out Pink Floyd. I know I'm wearing the Dark Side of the Moon hat, which is a Pink Floyd album, but I actually suggest that you check out all of the Core 4 albums: Dark Side of the Moon, Animals, The Wall, and Wish You Were Here. They're very good albums, each appealing in their own distinct way. They're kind of in the same vein that Arcade Fire was, that I talked about earlier, but it's also very different at the same time. It's got that 70s psychedelic rock feel behind it. So also, yes, check that out too. Along with that, going into more of kind of getting on the very soft side of alternative, we have Devon Church's album, We Are Inextricable, which is a very soft-sided alternative album. It's got some very soft elements to it. Very much feels like, I feel like every time I listen to the album, I am slowly ascending up to heaven to see God himself. This is how soft and melodic and comforting this album feels. It makes me feel very safe every time I listen to this album, and I absolutely love it. So there's that. Check that out if you kind of want a more soft side of alternative and a very happy side of alternative music with a kind of bittersweet twist on it. Moving on to even more droning material, we're going into actual drone music now. Starting out with Birth of a New Day by 2048. 2048's album, Birth of a New Day, is probably the single best drone album I have ever heard. It's amazing, and you should probably listen to it if you can all get into drone. Drone music is really good and relaxing. Drone is kind of out there a little bit. It's not going to appeal to everybody, especially if you've only listened to like stuff on the radio or Monster Cats music or something equally just super popular, or Imagine Dragons, 21 Pilots, anything that's super popular. You might not get into some of these genres. Some of them you might like, though, so I'm just throwing out some of the best and more easily approachable albums of genres that I am finding. Again, moving on to Chiptune, Anamanguchi's Endless Fantasy, and She Music's Chiptune Memories are both really good albums. They can really help you get into chiptune. If you grew up with old Genesis consoles and NES consoles and stuff like that, you might really, really dig the music and sound production on this for both the nostalgia factor and the fact that it's just really well-produced music with some really good soft tracks and quite a few bangers. So definitely check those albums out if you want to check out what chiptune is. Let's see, what else do we have? What other genres can I try and break people into? Now, talking about rap music, rap is one of those genres that's really hard to get me into music that I like in rap, because I just don't like a lot of it, because I don't think a lot of it is super well constructed, especially with the tons and tons of trap beats for rap nowadays. I don't really dig into that. But I will say that Logic's The Incredible True Story is a very good rap album. I think the way it handles a lot of its beats, a lot of its lyrics and flow in it is incredibly well done. And if you like rap music, I suggest to check out the entire album. Looking at my list real quick, other rap albums that are worth your time. I guess I'm going to throw out Linkin Park. Everyone knows who Linkin Park is. No, there's rap in there, but it's not. It's really just nu metal. Good nu metal, but it's still nu metal, and everyone knows who Linkin Park is. There's Milo. He made an album, Who Told You to Think? It's a really good album. I highly suggest if you like It kind of fits into the same vein of that Devon Church album I mentioned earlier. It's kind of slow, it's melodic in areas, but it's a rap-based album instead of alternative lyrics thrown on top of it. Also, of course, having its different style and stuff. It's not like an exact clone. And it has some guest rappers on it, like Bus Driver. Mostly good performances on it. It's another album I really like and recommend if you want to get into rap music. I don't know. I guess that kind of wraps up my introductory albums. I'm sure I've recommended 12 or 15 right now. So that's kind of some albums if you want to get into certain genres of music. That kind of wraps up my crash course on just easy to access albums I recommend if you want to get into music. So take that for what you will. Check out some of the albums. Leave some comments below if you like these albums. So yeah.